You ever see a big company roll into town, promising the world, and wonder, is this actually a good deal for us? Well, today, we're going to do a full economic teardown of one of those deals. We're going to find out what really happens when our tax dollars go up against massive corporate ambition.
All right, let's just jump right in with a number that, well, it should make you stop and think. $4.26 million.
That, my friends, is what Iowa taxpayers paid for one single job in a big tech deal. So the question is just screaming at us, right? How in the world does that happen? And maybe more importantly, was it worth it? I mean, even a little? Let's get into it. Okay, so to really get our heads around this, let's kick things off with Section 1, a $4 million job.
So here's the deal. On paper, it sounds pretty simple, right? Apple, the tech giant, decides it's going to build a massive new data center in Waukee, Iowa.
But oh, the devil is always in the details, isn't it? The numbers behind this are kind of mind-blowing. Iowa put over $213 million in incentives on the table. And for what? Just 50 permanent jobs? But here's where it gets really wild, the fine print. They agreed to a 7-year wait before it even opened. And get this, no penalties if Apple was late. And, the real kicker, no limit on how much the public might have to pay for infrastructure. You see, that's the stuff that sets the stage for this whole mess. So, when all was said and done, how did this thing actually shake out? Let's find out in Section 2, the deals report card. This right here really lays out the trade-off. Let's look at the scorecard. In one corner, what Iowa gave up. Over $213 million in incentives, 2,000 acres of prime farmland, 20 years of slashed tax revenue that should have gone to things like schools, a massive new strain on their power grid and water supply, and yeah, that 7-year wait. And in the other corner, what Iowa got back, those 50 permanent jobs, a huge capital investment, that mostly helps Apple's bottom line, of course, a few hundred temporary construction jobs, a public improvement fund, and I guess the bragging rights of having a big name in town. So, what's the final grade? Well, the report card is in, and it is not good. For the taxpayers of Iowa, a D+. For Waukee schools and local budgets who actually saw their funding get squeezed, a flat D. And for the residents and local services, a C-. I mean, the takeaway here couldn't be clearer. This was an A+ deal for Apple, but a pretty dismal return for the people of Iowa.
All right, so we've definitely seen the problem, but how do we avoid this kind of thing in the future? How do we think about these deals in a smarter way? Well, that brings us to Section 3, thinking like an economist.
The most important idea here is something called the economic ripple effect. Think about it like throwing a rock in a pond. There's the initial splash, that's the investment. But what we really need to watch are the ripples that spread out from there. It's all about looking past that first splash to see the cascading impacts over time and asking the big question, does this deal create value that grows, or does it just fade away? And we can actually break this down into 3 distinct ripples, or waves. The first wave, that's the obvious stuff, the first-order effects, the financial numbers you see in the headlines like investment dollars and jobs. The second wave is about behavior. How does a deal like this change how people act? Does it build trust? Does it create stability? And then you've got the third and most powerful wave, the systemic effects. These are the deep, long-term shifts that create a lasting advantage for community, or, on the flip side, a huge systemic risk. Okay, so now let's actually use this ripple effect framework, and I promise you, this is where things get really, really interesting. Welcome to Section 4, the Chipotle test. Yep, you heard that right. We're going to put that one massive billion-dollar Apple data center head-to-head with one single Chipotle restaurant. Just your average Chipotle you could find in any town in Iowa. I know, it sounds a little crazy, but just stick with me here. This is going to make a lot of sense. Just look at these numbers. Taxpayer cost per job at the data center, that's our old friend $4.26 million. At Chipotle, 0. Nada. How long to open its doors? The data center took 7 years. At Chipotle, they're up and running in 60 to 90 days. I mean, we're not even in the same ballpark here. It's just night and day. Okay, now let's talk about those ripples, the second and third order effects. What's the local economic impact? Well, the data center, it spends almost nothing with local suppliers. The money doesn't really stick around. But Chipotle, it's buying from local vendors, and its employees are living, shopping, and spending their paychecks right there in the community. And career paths. The data center has a few highly specialized roles, but not much access for most people. Chipotle, on the other hand, has a really clear career ladder where you can go from making burritos all the way up to general manager. So when you put it all together on a scorecard, the story is undeniable. On pretty much every dimension that actually creates long-term value for a community, things like jobs per public dollar, developing a local workforce, generating local tax activity, the Chipotle model just wins. It's not even close. And it proves a really powerful point. Sometimes small, locally integrated investments create way more economic ripple than one giant, isolated mega project.
So, the big question is, what's the takeaway? What do we do with this information? Well, let's get into solutions in our final section, how to build better deals.
Now, let's be super clear about something. This isn't about saying data centers are always bad. They're not. They can bring a ton of value. We're talking huge capital investments, major upgrades to tech infrastructure, and really high-paying jobs that can become the anchor for a whole new tech scene. But, and this is the most important but of this whole explainer, you only get that value if certain conditions are met. Conditions like the company pays for the infrastructure it needs, the jobs they promise actually show up, and if they don't, there are penalties, clawbacks. They have to commit to a minimum spend with local businesses, and an independent analysis has to prove the deal will actually add to the tax base, not drain it. So think of this as a simple, non-negotiable checklist for any town or city looking at one of these big deals. Number 1. Pay for what you use. If a developer needs new roads or power lines, they foot the bill. Number 2. Create real opportunities for locals. That means local jobs, local spending, and real career paths. And number 3, prove the value. The deal has to deliver net new tax revenue within a decade. If it doesn't, the public gets its money back. It really should be that simple.
And figuring this all out doesn't have to be guesswork anymore. This is exactly where modern tools can be a game changer. Think about it. AI, when it's guided by the right economic framework, can model all of these different ripple effects for you. It can stress test the promises a company makes, find all the hidden costs, and even spin up alternative scenarios, just like our Chipotle test, on the fly. It gives policymakers the power to make genuinely informed decisions.
And that really brings us to the heart of it all, the main point of this entire explainer. It boils down to this, one simple, powerful idea. Iowa needs to ensure that Iowa Capital Investments works for all Iowans. Look, this isn't just about one deal in one town. It's about a fundamental shift in mindset. It's about building communities where the benefits are shared by everyone, not just a select few. And it leaves us with one final, crucial question. Are our leaders asking the right questions before they sign on the dotted line?